Thank you everybody for inviting me here. It's quite the honor. Before I start, I just want to promote the Cantheus launch that's happening next March 9th. March 9th is in I think 2 weeks from now. So it's the issue number 6, and there's going to be a lot of featured speakers. And it's happening at the same venue here at 7 p.m. And Claire and Kira Nickel, who isn't here today, are part of that editorial board, as well as myself and a few others in this room, Leah and Manahil. And if you guys want to see some really awesome writing, I strongly recommend that you come. So anyway, moving on to embarrassing Professor Seymour Main, who's at the very back and told me not to do this. I wanted to read a poem today from Reunions in the Year of the Sheep that was originally written for my parents. And it's a thank you poem to mentors that guided me in my writing. And I wasn't sure if Professor Seymour Main was going to be in the audience today, but he is today, and I've heard that he hasn't been in the audience for a couple of these readings. So I thought that I would read this poem, and hopefully you can get the gist of it without me embarrassing him any further, because his face is already, I think, noticeably pretty red. Anyway, hey Doc. Okay, so the poem is called Turning the Tide. My mother's heart doesn't beat to stay alive, it beats to keep pace for everyone else. A girl from a big city born under a bigger moon, a boy's eyes opening to the light of a small crescent. She did not let me into this world until the moon waned, and so I completed my father and we became whole. When I return home, there is my father in their bed, an iPad filled with pandas, the scent of my mother's fingers, the skins of oranges dotting her hair. These pieces of the moon, scooped out of the sky, steadying the river of my life. One day they will leave. Dust will cover the windowsill, and the song of their voices will no longer greet the morning. But for now, keep their glasses perched on their noses, the pandas and orange peels on the bed. Let my mother guide my father through the sea of their lives, the storms of my own, until I am ordered to return their fragile moonlight back to the sky for safekeeping. This poem is called A Conversation with Anne. Hell's Road is another hip break away. And I hated my husband, you know. He and I were two sunk birds in a gray ditch. I'm goddamn 83, and home is a crumbling portrait tacked over the hole in the wall. Did I mention his hands only smelled like winter balm? And the prince's new wife is nowhere near Diana. What a disgrace. And why are all the ladies in this place pregnant with stories? We're all just a bunch of cracked gray gourds. My mother was a war bride, you know, and I was there in 43 when my table shook and my sleeves crumbled like pastries. Would you like a wintergreen mint? I've had them for years. Who the hell is playing that Christian music? So then I say, while sucking on the mint, you sure have lived a lot, and I hope my life will be like yours. When suddenly, she presses her face close to mine and says, do you really want to be like this? Look at me, look at me. And there she is, her cloud of hair floating away, halfway between trees and the river's edge. She tells me I am her first sign of spring, says great returns are met with great departure. She is motionless, shrinking in a shawl. It is summer, and her body is crooked, enjoying the sun by the river she can barely see. All the while, I rinse the taste of stale winter mint from my mouth, but how it stays, even now, burning all my words down. The Geologist. My father tells me the story of a scientist in a philosophy class who wrote a poem for a paper. I wonder why, I wonder why. I wonder why, I wonder. I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder. He laughs at the scientist's genius and philosophy's absurdity, gestures to the moon and says, listen, kid, a lawyer, an architect, and a geologist go up there. The architect builds a home, I find water, and the lawyer bullshits all day but dies because bullshitting does not find water. Is secondary to survival. When I am 9, I return home with a failing grade. My mother shows my father, who cries. He has failed me. The next exam is on rock formations, sedimentary, metamorphic, igneous. Their qualities, their temperaments. I memorize their details, write stories about their lives. I am the top of the class. My father is on an expedition, laughs through the phone. His pride guides me like a road. But when I am older, I want to fuck off to somewhere like Montreal, poetry eloping with my heart. I am broomsticked, heart-hungry black. I am broomsticked, heart-hungry blue. My father navigates the entirety of the moon, finds me in its center, offers me water, life, fury, survival secondary to love. I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder why. This poem, haha, it's a really funny title. Actually, I think it's funny, but nobody else thinks it's funny. Anyway, the poem is called Pygmalion the Colonialist. Ooh, okay. Sorry. He spoke to her in riddles and departed to China, determined to open an ancient world and save it from plunder. They sat at a bar as he tipped the waitress, who was all eyeballs and gunnel legs, leaving him a number and a glance as he said, "Kid, adios. I bid you farewell." Stood, then left, headed east to her old country where he sent weekend Skype updates. Asia is really messed up. I need to help these people. Your country is a tyrant among kings. I'm an expert on Asian women. Meanwhile, his angry ex-wife sent him Sufi love poems and threats of violence as he paraded himself like a pageant queen through a country filled with ghosts. And when he returned, he said he was a changed man, that the plight of his sisters and brothers was no fickle issue. Tried to remind her of how she could have died, born the misfortunate sex. Luckily, though, you're a child raised in Canada, educated, unmarried, untouched. You have a duty to be with me. He even held her close, some virginal ideal, a hallmark Magdalena. Told her that one day she would come to realize it was in her best interest to love him, that he could protect her, educate her, make her better. His eyes, even filled with tears, promised love. Hush, my child, my lamb, my queen, tell me of your culture, your people. I will ease your sadness. And so she looked at him closely, those eyes, that face. His love was history repeated, filled with all the conquests, divisions, maps, children, and myths she knew too much of. She spoke. I have heard those words before, said by kings who painted their cities in women red. Am I Miss Saigon? Madam Butterfly, that sad chick from Norwegian Wood? Do I need a savior? Do I need a savior like you? I eat burgers, shithead. She filled the room with laughter made of knives and arrows, filling his body with holes. So he announced, when you are less of a fool, you will know I was the man for you, but I will no longer be here waiting. So she responded, I am already living, so wait for the day you think will come, when I might someday learn to love you, and perhaps your soul will be fuller. So she left him, silent, and he stood waiting, until at last he froze, turning into a statue, a relic, a nameless, mouseless palladium, eyes filled with the recollection of a girl's body, alive with breath, dancing down the road into the world that flooded her with welcomes. This last poem I'm going to read comes from Reunions in the Year of the Sheep, It was written about 4 or 5 years ago. It talks a lot about culture shock, I think, and just moving to a bigger city when you come from a bit of a smaller one. The road home. 1. Between 2 apartments near the home I used to know, a cat rubs her head against my leg, asks me to rub out her fleas, so I oblige, nails deep picking at everything, gray clumps and dirt falling. Sunlight catches a glint of spit and cigarette ends, Stone Street marked with bad habits. Everything is a rough, ugly diamond. My grandmother tells me summers in Shanxi are dust and coughing. Try not to wear white collars, they will yellow by the evening. Cat curled into me, cradling this stray stranger, pink paw pointed up. I lean in, smell her accidents, earth and home. A lady plays with her son, her daughter swaddled in a potato-colored sack. 2. Welcome home to this city of gods, this city of Tinderellas, this city of dreams. The male stripper outside the club dances the story of my life. Gay pride in a proud city. Someone is protesting something. This city is ballsy, this city is me. I've earned my subway seat, my gray morning's bleak coffee, the right to wander, wonder, binge on beer, these Sunday hangovers, sipping kombucha on a bench next to 2 ladies knitting. I've earned the dude on the fixed gear asking me my race, to which I reply, easy and slow. Lost in translation, I am bleeding in Shanxi, entitled to everything. Cut arm, cat gone, neither here nor there, but breathing. 3. Kids everywhere swaying like boats to songs not even written yet. Chick swaddling her baby in neutral colors. Hello again, it's me, back in my hometown. Ladies squinting as I rub a flea between my fingers. Cat purring as my grandmother tells me farmers' wives are the color of cashews. And what's up with chicks carrying parasols and lace gloves as a mother bends to wipe her kid's butt and waters down the flood of brown. She is squatting so wide, her nylon toes are spread apart. Her sandals are funny looking. Someone kicks her and she is crying, but I didn't see it. This isn't my country, so I keep walking. 4. Tess and I burning on a nude beach. Guy thanks us for the view. Where did I come from and why is this happening? Friends dumping rum into the water. Are we youths or are we Satan? 2 strangers say hello. We are Boris and Fabian, and would you like to come to our white-themed yacht party? I ask if we must go as whiteface, but no one is laughing. Sorry, sorry, sorry. 5. No, I said to a man I likened to a dove, who I swallowed, plumed feathers flitting in my body, who I loved until I disappeared, who said I loved like it was a sacrifice, but really now, isn't it? And there is my father sitting on the staircase he built, playing the erhu as my mother serves me noodles in a fish-shaped bowl. Do you know how much you are loved? My father shouts across the room. My daughter, you are so loved. My daughter, you are so strong. Did you know the first time I heard you speak, your chubby face smiled and laughed at me as you, my daughter, born to resist, said so sparingly, no. 6. And so I return, 7 years later, bumbling my way through this country and out the other. I am an educated young Canadian, and my grandmother is smaller than she's ever been. Hands linked as we walk through Shanxi for the last time, as she says she will wait for me, as she tells me she will live to see my daughter because she is healthy, shoulders soft as hills, body swelling. She is the last sunrise I will ever see. As I move again in and out the door, hands shaking as we look at each other, silent because we know this is the last time that I will leave her. 7. What's your opinion on Tibet? Hey man, I'm just a tall, whitewashed Chinese girl. I say to a man who likes my look and kisses me 3 times, You're so exotic. You remind me of this chick I met once in Thailand. She was so hot. You look just like her. And really now, what's the difference between pleasure and shame if you all look the same? 8. And so I forget that the sun rises, that the sun sets, as my fingers sink into the valley of your shoulder blades. 9. My relatives sink into the ground, pour spirits over my grandfather's grave. My grandmother inside gazes at the trees, and I recall once my mother paid hundreds to a Lhasa for 2 pink pills, paper promises that my grandparents would live 100 years. But here we are, this mountain of the dead, where only the living weep. 10. And what I would never give to match the nothing color of your skin. An old friend once gave me a monarch's wing. How closely it resembled an orange sail. 11. And so I learned through the wax coating of cat's ears, my friend's bum burning on a beach, the foreign lady squatting and weeping, drunk teens dumping Bacardi, my father's pride, my mother's courage, and all the ones who loved me, that the hunger for home will make anything resemble what we long for a semblance of. 12. In her last dance, the monarch shuddered with life, with fear and her own dying. Goodbye at the edge of a stranger's mouth turns into hello on a newborn son's tongue, fists heaving mountains of his mother's hair, as she stares at the stranger who looks so much like her sister, picking fleas out of a feral cat's mottled fur. 13. And my future is bright, and my future is good, and I'm earning the forgiveness I deserve, as I continue to say hello and goodbye to enough people to fill the ocean of my life that sways, that swoons, that swallows, on this long, long road home. Thank you.